The stagecoach wheel shattered against the boulder with a crack that echoed across the endless Arizona desert, sending Beatrice Caldwell tumbling into the burning sand as the horses screamed and bolted into the shimmering heat waves of June 1883. Pain exploded through her shoulder as she landed hard, her carpetbag flying from her grip and spilling its contents across the scorched earth. The driver lay motionless 20 feet away, his neck bent at an unnatural angle. The other passenger, an elderly merchant, had somehow managed to cling to his seat, but now sat dazed and bleeding from a gash on his forehead. Beatrice struggled to her feet, her traveling dress already soaked through with sweat beneath the merciless sun. "Sir, are you all right?" She called to the merchant, but her voice came out as barely more than a croak. Her throat felt like sandpaper. She had been traveling for 3 weeks from Boston, coming west to marry a man she had never met, answering an advertisement that promised a better life than the one she had known as a seamstress in a crowded tenement. Now, staring at the broken stagecoach and the vast emptiness surrounding them, she wondered if she would ever reach the town of Florissant, Arizona, or the rancher who awaited her arrival. The merchant stumbled down from his perch, pressing a handkerchief to his bleeding head. "The driver is dead," he said flatly, stating what they both already knew. "We are somewhere between Tucson and Florissant, perhaps 15 miles from either town, maybe more." Beatrice felt her stomach drop. She was 6 months pregnant, though she had told no one, not even the rancher she was meant to marry. The child was not his. She had been foolish once, believing the promises of a man who had disappeared the moment she told him about the baby. The advertisement for a mail-order bride had seemed like providence, a chance to start over and give her child a father and a name, but she needed to survive this desert first. "We should stay with the coach," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Someone will come looking for us when we do not arrive." The merchant shook his head. "Look at the horses. They have run off with most of our water. We have perhaps 1 canteen between us, and this sun will kill us before nightfall if we do not find shelter." He squinted at the horizon. "I believe there is a trading post to the northeast. If we walk now, we might reach it before dark." Beatrice gathered what she could from her scattered belongings, her hands trembling. Her best dress, the one she had planned to wear when meeting her intended husband, was ruined. She stuffed a few personal items into what remained of her bag and took a long drink from the single canteen they had found, knowing she needed to conserve their precious water, but unable to stop herself. The baby inside her seemed to be pressing against her lungs, making it harder to breathe in the stifling heat. They walked for what felt like hours, the merchant leading the way with increasing uncertainty. The sun climbed higher, turning the desert into a furnace. Beatrice's feet blistered inside her impractical city boots. Her vision began to blur at the edges, and twice she stumbled, catching herself at the last moment. The merchant was faring no better, his face growing increasingly pale beneath the blood that had dried on his forehead. "I need to rest," Beatrice finally gasped, sinking to her knees beside a scraggly mesquite tree that offered almost no shade. The merchant looked at her with hollow eyes. "If we stop, we die." "If we continue without rest, we die faster," she replied, her voice barely audible. She could feel the baby moving inside her, and panic seized her chest. What had she done? She had put not just herself but her unborn child in mortal danger, all because she had been too proud to ask for help from her family, too ashamed to admit her mistakes. The merchant handed her the canteen. It was nearly empty. "Drink," he said. "You are young. You have a better chance than I do." Then, before she could protest, he turned and continued walking northeast, his steps increasingly unsteady, Beatrice wanted to call after him to tell him to wait, but her throat would not cooperate. She took a small sip of water and watched him disappear over a rise in the distance. She was alone now, truly alone in a landscape that cared nothing for her survival. The sun beat down relentlessly, and she pulled her bonnet lower, though it provided little protection. Her hands moved instinctively to her belly, feeling the firm swell beneath her dress. "I am sorry," she whispered to her unborn child. "I am so sorry." She must have lost consciousness then, because when she opened her eyes next, the sun had moved considerably across the sky. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, and her tongue felt swollen in her mouth. She tried to stand, but her legs would not support her weight. The world tilted dangerously, and she fell forward onto the hot sand. This was how she was going to die, she thought with strange detachment. Not in a comfortable bed surrounded by family, but alone in the desert, her baby dying with her, neither of them ever knowing what might have been. She thought of her mother back in Boston, how she would never know what had happened to her daughter. She thought of the rancher waiting in Florissant for a bride who would never arrive. She thought of all the choices that had led her to this moment, and tears finally came, though she had no moisture to spare. Through the haze of heat and desperation, she thought she heard hoofbeats. Probably a hallucination, she told herself, her mind playing tricks as it began to shut down. But the sound grew louder, more insistent, and then a shadow fell across her face, blocking out the punishing sun. "Dear God," a man's voice said, rough with shock and concern. Strong hands rolled her onto her back, and she found herself looking up at a face that seemed to swim in and out of focus. He was young, probably close to her own age of 22, with dark hair and eyes the color of whiskey. He wore the clothing of a working cowboy, dusty and worn, and his face was deeply tanned from years under the Arizona sun. "Can you hear me?" he asked urgently, pulling a canteen from his saddle. "Do not drink too fast," he warned as he helped her sit up and held the water to her cracked lips. The water was the most beautiful thing she had ever tasted. She wanted to gulp it down to drain the entire canteen, but he pulled it away after just a few swallows. "I know you want more, but your body needs time. Too much at once will make you sick." "My baby," she managed to croak, her hand moving to her stomach. "Please, my baby." The cowboy's eyes widened as he looked at her more carefully, taking in the swell of her pregnancy beneath her dress. His expression hardened with determination. "We need to get you out of this sun right now," he said. He whistled sharply, and his horse, a sturdy bay mare, trotted over obediently. "I am going to lift you onto my horse. It will hurt, but I need you to hold on." "Can you do that?" Beatrice nodded weakly. When he lifted her, she bit back a cry of pain. Her entire body felt like it was on fire, her skin burned and her muscles screaming from dehydration. He swung up behind her, one arm wrapped securely around her waist to keep her upright, and turned the horse away from the direction she had been traveling. "There was a man," she whispered. "An older man. He went looking for help. How long ago? I do not know. Hours, maybe." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "I will send someone to look for him as soon as I get you to safety. My name is Isaac Owens. I run a ranch about 5 miles west of here. We will be there in less than an hour if we push hard." "Beatrice Caldwell," she managed to say. "I was going to Florissant. To marry someone." She felt him tense slightly behind her, but his voice remained steady. "Let us worry about keeping you alive first. Everything else can wait." The ride was agony. Every movement of the horse sent jolts of pain through her body, and the heat continued to press down on them like a physical weight. Isaac gave her water at intervals, small sips that barely touched her thirst, but gradually began to restore some clarity to her thoughts. He spoke to her constantly, asking her questions to keep her conscious, telling her about his ranch and his life in Arizona. "I came out here 5 years ago," he said, as the horse maintained a steady pace across the scrubland. "After my parents died of fever back in Missouri. I had always wanted to see the territories, and there was nothing left for me back home. Started as a ranch hand, saved every penny I could, and finally bought my own spread 2 years ago. It is not much, just enough land for a small herd and a modest house, but it is mine. Alone." Beatrice asked, her voice slightly stronger now. "Mostly. I have 2 hands who help with the cattle, but they have their own place in town. I prefer the solitude, to be honest, or I thought I did." He paused, and she felt his arm tighten slightly around her. "Truth is, it gets lonely out here. I have been thinking about finding a wife, but I do not trust those mail-order bride advertisements. Seems like a poor way to start a marriage between strangers." Despite everything, Beatrice felt a flush of shame. That was exactly what she had been doing, what she still was doing. "Some people have no choice," she said quietly. "Some people need a new start." "I suppose that is true," Isaac replied, and his tone softened. "I did not mean any offense." They fell into silence after that, and Beatrice focused all her energy on staying conscious and holding onto the saddle horn. The baby was moving more now, perhaps responding to the water she had consumed or simply protesting the rough treatment. She prayed silently, fervently, that her child would be all right, that this nightmare would not cost her the one thing in her life that mattered. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she saw buildings rising from the desert floor. A small ranch house, weathered but sturdy, with a barn and several outbuildings clustered around it. Chickens scratched in a fenced yard, and she could see a windmill turning lazily in the hot breeze, pumping water into a trough. Isaac dismounted quickly and lifted her down with surprising gentleness for such a large man. He carried her into the house without pause, kicking open the door and bringing her to a bedroom at the back of the house where the walls were thick adobe that kept out the worst of the heat. "I am going to get more water and some cloths to cool you down," he said, settling her carefully on the bed. "Then I need to ride to town to get the doctor and organize a search party for that merchant." "Do not leave," Beatrice said, sudden panic seizing her. The thought of being alone again, even in the relative safety of his house, terrified her. Isaac hesitated, clearly torn. "The doctor," he began. "I need water and rest more than I need a doctor right now," she insisted. "And that man needs help as soon as possible. If you leave to get the doctor first, it could be hours before anyone goes looking for him. He could die." He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You are right, but I am not leaving you completely alone. My ranch hands, Miguel and Tom, they should be bringing the herd back to the north pasture soon. I will wait until they arrive, make sure someone stays with you, and then ride for help. Can you hold on that long?" "Yes," Beatrice said, though she was not entirely certain. Now that she was lying down, every part of her body seemed to be screaming at once. Her head pounded, her skin felt tight and burning, and her belly cramped uncomfortably. Isaac brought her more water and a bowl of cool water with cloths. He showed her how to wet the cloths and place them on her forehead and neck to bring down her body temperature. His hands were rough from work, but surprisingly gentle, as he helped her remove her ruined bonnet and loosen the tight collar of her dress. "I am not trying to be improper," he said, his ears reddening slightly. "But these tight clothes are not helping. You need to be able to breathe." "I understand," Beatrice said. "Thank you for everything. You saved my life. 2 lives," she amended, her hand moving to her belly. Something flickered across Isaac's face, an emotion she could not quite name. "Any decent person would have done the same," he said gruffly. "You just rest now. Help will be here soon." True to his word, 2 cowboys rode up to the ranch within the half hour. Isaac spoke to them in low, urgent tones outside the bedroom door. And then one of them, a young man with a friendly face who introduced himself as Tom, came to sit in a chair by her bedside while Isaac and Miguel rode off toward town and to search for the missing merchant. Tom was perhaps 20, with an easy manner that helped calm some of Beatrice's anxiety. He brought her more water and even managed to find some broth from Isaac's larder, which he heated over the stove and convinced her to drink, despite her protests that she was not hungry. "Isaac would have my hide if I let anything happen to you," Tom said with a grin. "I have been working for him for over a year now, and I have never seen him so rattled. He is usually calm as a Sunday morning, but when he came racing back here with you, he looked like he had seen a ghost." "I must have been quite a sight," Beatrice said weakly. "Half dead in the desert." "You are safe now," Tom assured her. "Isaac is a good man, one of the best I have known. If anyone can find that merchant and get the doctor here quickly, it is him." Hours passed slowly. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and red visible through the small window. Beatrice drifted in and out of sleep, her body exhausted but her mind unable to fully rest. She kept thinking about the merchant, hoping he had found shade, hoping he was still alive. She thought about the stagecoach driver and said a prayer for his soul. She thought about the rancher in Florissant who was expecting a bride and wondered what would happen now. It was full dark when she heard horses outside and the sound of many voices. Tom left her bedside and returned moments later with an older man carrying a leather medical bag. The doctor introduced himself as James Hardy and immediately began examining her with brisk efficiency. "You are severely dehydrated," he announced after checking her pulse and looking into her eyes. "But I think you will recover with rest and plenty of fluids. The pregnancy complicates things, of course. How far along are you?" 6 months, I think," Beatrice said. "Perhaps a bit more." Dr. Hardy pressed his hands gently against her belly, feeling the position of the baby. "The child seems active and strong. That is a good sign. But you need complete bed rest for at least a week, possibly longer. No travel, no exertion. Do you understand?" Beatrice nodded, relief washing through her. Her baby was all right. They were both going to survive. "What about the merchant?" she asked. "The man who was with me, did they find him?" The doctor's expression darkened. "They did. He had collapsed about 2 miles from where Isaac found you, but he is alive. Barely. I left him in town under the care of the local minister's wife. Whether he pulls through is in God's hands now." Isaac appeared in the doorway then, dusty and tired but alert. His eyes went immediately to Beatrice. "She is going to be all right?" he asked the doctor. "Yes, but she needs rest and care. Is there family I should contact, a husband?" "No husband," Beatrice said quickly. "I was traveling to Florissant to meet my intended husband. I have never met him before. We corresponded through letters." "I see," the doctor said, his tone carefully neutral. "Well, you certainly cannot travel to meet him now. You need to stay put." Isaac stepped forward. "She can stay here. I have the room, and it is closer than taking her into town. Tom and Miguel can help look after her when I am working." "That hardly seems proper," Dr. Hardy said with a frown. "An unmarried woman staying at a bachelor's ranch." "I am sure the good people of Florissant would have opinions," Isaac said dryly, "but I care more about what is practical than what is proper. She needs rest and care, and I can provide both, unless you have a better suggestion," the doctor sighed. "Actually, I do not. The boarding house in town is full, and I do not know of anyone else who has space for a guest who will need monitoring for several days." "Very well, but I will be checking on her regularly, and I expect everything to remain entirely appropriate." "Of course," Isaac said stiffly. "I am not a scoundrel, doctor." After the doctor left with promises to return the next day, Isaac came back into the bedroom and sat heavily in the chair Tom had vacated. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were kind as they met hers. "I sent word to Florissant about what happened," he said quietly. "Let your intended husband know you are alive but recovering and will need some time before you can continue your journey. I hope that was all right." Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. "You have done so much for me already. I do not know how I can ever repay you." "You do not need to repay me," Isaac said firmly. "Just get well, that is all I ask." He stood to leave but paused at the doorway. "Did you want to marry him, this rancher in Florissant?" The question caught her off guard. "I do not know," she admitted. "I have never met him. We exchanged a few letters and he seemed kind enough. He wanted a wife to help run his household and I needed a place to go. It seemed practical." "Practical," Isaac repeated, something unreadable in his tone. "Not exactly romantic." "Romance is for people who can afford it," Beatrice said, more sharply than she intended. "Some of us have to make harder choices." Isaac nodded slowly. "I suppose that is true. Good night, Miss Caldwell. Rest well." After he left, closing the door softly behind him, Beatrice lay in the darkness and felt the baby move inside her. She wondered what she was doing, what she was going to do. The rancher in Florissant expected a bride, yes, but she had lied to him by omission. She had not told him about the baby. What would he do when he learned the truth? Would he still want to marry her, or would he turn her away? And if he turned her away, where would she go? What would become of her child? The next few days passed in a blur of rest and recovery. Isaac was away most of the time, working his ranch and giving her privacy, but Tom or Miguel was always nearby if she needed anything. They brought her meals and fresh water, and Miguel's wife, Rosa, came from town to help her bathe and change into a nightgown that Rosa had brought from her own wardrobe. "You gave everyone quite a scare," Rosa said as she gently brushed Beatrice's hair, working out the tangles from days of travel and trauma. She was a kind woman in her 30s, with warm brown eyes and a gentle manner. "Isaac barely sleeps. He keeps checking to make sure you have everything you need." "He has been very kind," Beatrice said. "Everyone has." Rosa smiled knowingly. "Isaac is a good man. Lonely, I think, though he would never admit it. This ranch, it is his whole life, but a ranch is not enough to keep a person warm at night, you know." Beatrice felt her cheeks flush. "I am spoken for," she said quietly, "or I will be once I reach Florissant." "Ah yes, this rancher you have never met. Tell me, why would a pretty young woman like you agree to marry a stranger? You are educated, I can hear it in how you speak. You could work, support yourself." "It is complicated," Beatrice said, her hand moving unconsciously to her belly. Rosa's eyes followed the gesture, and understanding dawned on her face. "I see. And does this rancher in Florissant know about the baby?" "No," Beatrice whispered. "I should have told him, but I was afraid he would not want me if he knew. I thought perhaps if we were already married when he found out, it would be too late for him to change his mind." "That is a dangerous game," Rosa said gently. "Built on deception from the start. What kind of marriage can grow from lies? What choice do I have?" Beatrice asked, and she heard the desperation in her own voice. "I have no family, no money. The father of my child is gone. I cannot raise a baby alone with no means to support us." "There are always choices," Rosa said, but her tone was sympathetic. "Though I understand yours seemed limited. Just remember that sometimes the path we think is our only option is not the one we are meant to walk." By the end of the week, Beatrice was feeling much stronger. The doctor pronounced her out of immediate danger, but insisted she continue resting for several more days before attempting any travel. She had begun taking short walks around the ranch house, building her strength gradually. Isaac was there more often now that the immediate crisis had passed, and she found herself looking forward to their conversations. He was different from any man she had known in Boston. He spoke plainly, without artifice, and he seemed genuinely interested in her opinions on things. They discussed books. She was surprised to learn he was well read despite his rough exterior, and he told her stories about life in the territories that both fascinated and frightened her. It was a hard land, he explained, that did not forgive weakness or stupidity. But it was also beautiful and full of possibility for those brave enough to claim it. "Why did you really agree to marry a stranger?" he asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. He had been working on fixing a bridle, his hands steady and sure as they worked the leather, but now he set it aside and looked at her directly. Beatrice had known this question would come eventually. She took a deep breath. "Because I am pregnant and the father is gone. I could not stay in Boston. The shame would have destroyed what little life I had there. Coming west seemed like a chance to start over, to give my child a name and a father." Isaac was quiet for a long moment. "And this rancher, you do not think he deserves to know the truth before you marry him?" "I know he does," Beatrice said, her voice shaking slightly. "But I am so afraid. What if he rejects me? What will happen to my baby then?" "I cannot speak for another man," Isaac said slowly, "but if I were in his position, I would want to know. And if I cared about the woman, truly cared, I do not think I would turn her away because of it. A child needs a mother and father, that is true, but more than that, a child needs parents who respect each other and build their life on honesty." "You make it sound simple," Beatrice said with a bitter laugh. "But you are not the one facing an uncertain future with a baby on the way and nowhere to go." "No, I am not," Isaac agreed. "But I do understand about starting over and trying to build something good from difficult circumstances." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something internally. What if you did not have to marry the rancher in Florissant? What if there were another option? Beatrice's heart began to pound. "What do you mean?" Isaac stood and walked to the edge of the porch, his back to her. "I have been thinking about this for days now, probably since the moment I found you in the desert. I know we barely know each other, and this is going to sound crazy, but hear me out." He turned to face her. "Stay here, marry me instead." The world seemed to tilt. "What?" "I know I am not much," Isaac continued quickly, the words tumbling out as if he had been holding them back for too long. "Just a cowboy with a small ranch, but I work hard and I can provide for you and the child. You would have a home here, a real home, not just a marriage of convenience with a stranger. And I promise you, I would never hold the baby against you. I would raise the child as my own, give him or her my name and everything I can offer." "Why?" Beatrice whispered, tears streaming down her face now. "Why would you do this for me?" Isaac came back and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his work-roughened ones. "Because when I saw you lying there in the desert, something in me knew I could not let you go. I know this does not make sense. We have known each other barely a week, but I feel more connected to you than I have felt to anyone in my entire life. You are strong and brave, traveling across the country alone to make a better life. You are educated and kind, the way you always ask about Tom and Miguel and thank Rosa for everything she does. You would make an excellent partner, and I hope, that maybe we could build something real together." Beatrice could barely breathe. "I do not love you," she said, needing to be honest. "I care for you greatly, you saved my life, but I do not know if I can love again. The father of my child, he hurt me badly when he left." "I am not asking for love right now," Isaac said gently. "I am asking for a chance. Marry me, stay here, let us get to know each other properly. Maybe love will come in time, maybe it will not. But I promise you this, I will never lie to you, never abandon you, and never give you reason to regret trusting me. That is more than most marriages start with. The rancher in Florissant, Beatrice began. I will ride to Florissant tomorrow and explain the situation to him personally, Isaac said. It is the honorable thing to do. If he is angry, I will handle it. But I will not have you traveling there out of obligation when there is another path forward. Beatrice looked into his eyes, those warm, whiskey-colored eyes that had been the first thing she saw when she thought she was dying. She thought about his kindness, his honesty, the way he had cared for her without asking for anything in return. She thought about the alternative, marrying a stranger who might reject her when he learned the truth, raising her child in a household built on lies and resentment. Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, I will marry you. The smile that broke across Isaac's face was like the sun coming out after a storm. He squeezed her hands gently, then seemed to catch himself and pulled back, suddenly shy. We should do it soon, he said. Before the baby comes, so there is no question about the child's legitimacy. Would next week be too soon? I know that does not give you much time to prepare. Next week is fine, Beatrice said, and she found herself smiling too, despite everything. It was insane, marrying a man she barely knew, but it felt right in a way that her planned marriage to the Florissant rancher never had. True to his word, Isaac rode to Florissant the next day. He returned that evening looking grim but determined. It is done, he said shortly. He was not pleased, but he accepted it. He said to tell you he hopes you find happiness. Was he very angry? Beatrice asked, feeling guilty despite everything. He was disappointed, Isaac admitted. But I explained the whole situation, that you had nearly died and that you deserved a chance at a real marriage. He is a decent man, I think. He understood, even if he was not happy about it. They were married the following Saturday in the small church in Florissant, with Dr. Hardy and Rosa and Miguel as witnesses. Beatrice wore a simple blue dress that Rosa had helped her alter to accommodate her pregnancy, and Isaac wore his Sunday best, his dark hair slicked back and his face clean-shaven. Tom and several other ranch hands and townspeople came to the ceremony, and afterward, Rosa hosted a small reception at her home in town. It should have felt strange, marrying a man she had known less than 2 weeks. But as Isaac slipped the simple gold band onto her finger and promised to love and cherish her all the days of his life, Beatrice felt something shift inside her chest. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of love. The beginning of something that might, with time and care, grow into something beautiful and real. Their wedding night was awkward and sweet. Isaac had given her the bedroom and planned to sleep in the main room, but Beatrice had insisted they share the bed. They were married now, after all, and she did not want to start their life together with unnecessary distance between them. I do not expect anything, Isaac said, his ears red as he changed into his nightshirt with his back to her. I know you are pregnant and tired, and this is all so new. I just want you to be comfortable. Come to bed, Beatrice said gently. We are husband and wife now, we have to start acting like it sometime. They lay side by side in the darkness, the space between them feeling vast. Finally, Beatrice reached out and took his hand. Thank you, she said softly, for everything you have done for me. I know I cannot give you everything you deserve, but I promise I will try to be a good wife to you. Isaac rolled onto his side to face her, and even in the dim moonlight coming through the window, she could see the intensity in his eyes. You already are, he said. Just by being here, by trusting me. That is enough. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, asking rather than demanding. Beatrice found herself responding, her hand coming up to cup his face. The kiss deepened, and she felt heat bloom through her body. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Isaac looked at her with wonder. Are you sure? He asked. I do not want to hurt you or the baby." "I am sure," Beatrice whispered. "I want this. I want to really be your wife." What followed was tender and careful, Isaac constantly checking to make sure she was comfortable, that he was not hurting her. It was different from her one previous experience, which had been fumbling and quick and ultimately disappointing. Isaac took his time, learning her body, showing her pleasure she had not known existed. And when it was over, he held her close, one hand resting protectively over her swollen belly. "I meant what I said before," he murmured against her hair. "This child is mine now in every way that matters. No one will ever make either of you feel less than wanted or loved." Beatrice felt tears slip down her cheeks, but for once they were tears of relief and happiness rather than fear. "How did I get so lucky?" she whispered. "To have you find me that day." "I think we both got lucky," Isaac replied. "I was riding back from checking the north fence line. If I had gone a different way, if I had left even an hour later, I would have missed you entirely. Maybe that is providence or fate or just blind luck, but I am grateful for it every day." The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Beatrice learned to manage a ranch household, which was vastly different from her life in Boston but satisfying in ways she had not anticipated. She cooked meals over the wood stove, learning from trial and error, and Rosa came by twice a week to teach her things like making bread and preserving vegetables. She helped Isaac with the ranch accounts, discovering she had a head for numbers that surprised them both. Isaac was patient with her, teaching her about ranch life without making her feel ignorant. He showed her how to collect eggs from the chickens without getting pecked, how to tell if a horse was lame just by watching it walk, how to read the weather in the shape of the clouds. In turn, she read to him in the evenings, books she had brought from Boston, and they would discuss the stories late into the night. She found herself falling in love with him gradually, the way dawn comes to the desert, slow and inevitable and beautiful. It was in the small things. The way he always made sure she had the best cuts of meat at dinner, how he would rest his hand on her belly to feel the baby kick and smile with genuine wonder, the way he kissed her goodbye each morning before heading out to work as if she were the most precious thing in his world. "I think I love you," she told him one night, the words spilling out unexpectedly as they lay in bed. They had been married for 2 months, and her belly was round and heavy now, the baby active and strong inside her. Isaac went very still beside her. "What did you say?" "I love you," Beatrice repeated, more confidently now. "I did not think I could, not after everything that happened before, but I do. You have been so good to me, so patient and kind. You have given me more than I ever dreamed of having. I love you, Isaac Owens." He pulled her into his arms as much as her pregnancy would allow, and she felt moisture on his cheeks. "I have loved you since the day I found you in that desert," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know that sounds impossible, but it is true. Something in me recognized you, knew you were mine to protect and cherish. Hearing you say you love me, it is everything I have been hoping for." They made love slowly and carefully, her pregnancy making them creative but no less passionate. And afterward, lying in the safety of his arms, Beatrice finally allowed herself to believe that everything would be all right, that she had found her home at last. The baby came in early September, during a thunderstorm that shook the ranch house and turned the desert temporarily into a sea of mud. Dr. Hardy barely made it in time, arriving windswept and soaked just as Beatrice's labor began in earnest. Rosa was there too, holding her hand and wiping her face with cool cloths as the contractions came harder and faster. Isaac paced in the main room, refusing to go outside despite Tom's suggestion that he make himself useful elsewhere. Every time Beatrice cried out, he flinched as if he had been struck. Finally, after hours of labor, The baby's first wail filled the house. "It is a boy," Dr. Hardy announced, wrapping the squirming infant in a clean blanket. "Healthy lungs, good color. You have a fine son, Mr. Owens." Isaac came into the room, his face pale but determined. He looked first at Beatrice, satisfying himself that she was all right, and then at the baby Rosa was cleaning gently with warm water. When she handed him his son, Isaac's eyes filled with tears. "He is perfect," he said in wonder, cradling the tiny bundle against his chest. "He is absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Beatrice asked tiredly. They had discussed names before but never settled on anything definite. Isaac looked down at the baby, who had stopped crying and was staring up at him with unfocused blue eyes. "Thomas," he said, "after my father, Thomas Isaac Owens." "If that is all right with you." "It is perfect," Beatrice said, and she meant it. "Let me hold him." Isaac brought the baby to her, placing him carefully in her arms. Thomas immediately began rooting around, searching for food, and with Rosa's help, Beatrice got him latched and nursing. The relief was immediate, and she felt her body begin to relax for the first time in hours. Isaac sat beside the bed, one hand on her shoulder, watching his wife and son with an expression of such complete contentment that it made Beatrice's heart ache. This man, this kind and gentle man who had rescued her from death in the desert, who had married her knowing she carried another man's child, who had promised to raise that child as his own, was now looking at Thomas with the exact same love he showed her. There was no difference in his eyes between biological and chosen. Thomas was his son, completely and irrevocably, and no one would ever convince him otherwise. "Thank you," Isaac said softly, "for giving me this, for trusting me, for making me a father." "Thank you," Beatrice replied, "for giving me and Thomas a home and a family, for loving us when we had nowhere else to go." Dr. Hardy cleared his throat. "I hate to interrupt this touching scene, but I need to finish examining Mrs. Owens and make sure there are no complications. Mr. Owens, why do not you take young Thomas and introduce him to his uncles? I am sure Tom and Miguel are anxious to meet him." Isaac carefully took the baby, who had fallen asleep after nursing, and carried him out to the main room. Beatrice could hear the exclamations of delight from Tom and Miguel, and it made her smile even as Dr. Hardy's examination continued. "You did very well," the doctor pronounced. "Everything looks normal. You will be sore for a while, and you need to rest as much as possible for the next few weeks, but I expect a full recovery. You are lucky to have such an attentive husband. Not all men are as willing to step up the way Mr. Owens has." "I know," Beatrice said softly. "Believe me, I know exactly how lucky I am." The months that followed were exhausting and beautiful in equal measure. Thomas was a good baby, relatively calm and content unless he was hungry or wet. Isaac was a devoted father, getting up in the night to bring the baby to Beatrice for feeding, and then changing him and rocking him back to sleep. During the day, he fashioned a sling so Beatrice could carry Thomas against her chest while she did her household chores. They settled into life as a family with surprising ease. Isaac taught Tom how to handle more of the ranch operations so he could spend more time at the house, and he was constantly finding excuses to come inside and check on his wife and son. Beatrice discovered she was happy in a way she had never been before, even during the hard times when money was tight or the cattle were sick or the weather turned harsh. One afternoon in November, as she sat on the porch with Thomas sleeping in her arms and watched Isaac working with a young horse in the corral, she reflected on how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been desperate and alone, prepared to marry a stranger out of sheer necessity. Now she was married to a man she loved deeply, with a beautiful son and a home that felt like it had always been hers. Rosa came by that afternoon for her regular visit, bringing fresh bread and some fabric she had gotten in town. "You look peaceful," she observed, settling into the chair beside Beatrice. "Like a woman who has finally found her place." "I think I have," Beatrice admitted. "It is strange how life works sometimes. I thought I knew what I needed, but I was so wrong. What I needed was exactly what I found, even though I never could have planned for it." "Isaac is happy too," Rosa said. "Miguel says he has never seen him smile so much. You are good for each other." "I hope so," Beatrice said. "I want to be the wife he deserves, the partner he needs." "You already are, I think," Rosa replied. "Marriage is not about being perfect. It is about showing up every day and choosing each other even when things are hard. You do that. He does that. That is all that matters." As winter set in, the ranch took on a different character. The work was different, focused on maintaining the herd through the cold months and making sure all the buildings were secure against the occasional harsh storms that swept through. Beatrice learned to bake pies and roasts, hearty meals that would stick to Isaac's ribs when he came in from long hours in the cold. She sewed clothes for Thomas, who was growing at an alarming rate, and started work on a quilt for their bed. For Christmas, Isaac surprised her with a rocking chair he had made himself in the barn workshop, carefully carved and sanded smooth. Beatrice gave him a new bridle she had commissioned from the leather worker in town, along with a scarf she had knitted in the evenings while he read to her. "This is the best Christmas I have ever had," Isaac said that night as they sat before the fire, Thomas sleeping peacefully in Beatrice's arms in the new rocking chair. "A wife I love, a healthy son, a home filled with warmth and laughter. Sometimes I have to pinch myself to believe it is all real." "It is real," Beatrice assured him, "and it is only going to get better." Spring came, bringing new life to the desert and new challenges to the ranch. A late freeze killed some of the early calves, and they lost 3 head of cattle to wolves. But they worked through it together, Isaac handling the practical matters while Beatrice managed the household and kept their spirits up with good food and warm affection. Thomas was walking now, toddling around the house and getting into everything. He had Isaac's dark hair and Beatrice's blue eyes, and his laugh was the sweetest sound either of them had ever heard. Isaac was constantly playing with him, down on the floor making horse sounds or carrying him around on his shoulders pointing out animals and plants. "You are going to spoil him," Beatrice said one afternoon, trying to sound stern but failing because she was smiling. "He is my son," Isaac replied simply, tossing Thomas in the air and catching him gently, making the boy shriek with delight. "I'm allowed to spoil him a little." In May, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. She told Isaac over dinner, watching his face carefully for his reaction. "Are you happy about it?" she asked when he just sat there staring at her. "Happy," Isaac repeated. "Beatrice, I am thrilled. Thomas is going to have a brother or sister. We are growing our family. How could I be anything but happy?" He came around the table and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with enthusiasm that made her laugh. "I love you so much," he said between kisses. "Thank you for giving me this life. Thank you for choosing me." "I love you too," Beatrice replied. "And for the record, I think you saved me, not the other way around. If you had not found me in that desert, I would have died. Thomas would have died. You gave us both life, and then you gave us love and a home. I am the one who should be thanking you." "We saved each other," Isaac said firmly. "That is the truth of it. You have given me purpose and joy I never had before. You have made this house a home. You have given me a family. We are partners in everything. Do not ever forget that." Their daughter was born the following January, during a cold snap that had ice forming on the water troughs. It was an easier birth than Thomas had been, and little Sarah Beatrice Owens entered the world with a full head of blonde hair and lungs that rivaled her brother's. Thomas, now almost 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister. He wanted to hold her constantly, under careful supervision, and would sing to her in his baby voice when she cried. Isaac was equally smitten, declaring that Sarah was the most beautiful baby girl ever born. "I have a son and a daughter," he said wonderingly, holding Sarah while Thomas sat on his lap looking at his sister with wide eyes. "My family is complete." "Not quite yet," Beatrice said with a mysterious smile. "Give it time. I think there might be more little Owens children running around this ranch before we are done." And she was right. Over the next several years, they had 2 more children. A son they named Matthew in 1887 and another daughter, Ruth, in 1889. The ranch house seemed to constantly ring with the sounds of children playing, laughing, arguing, and learning about the world around them. Isaac expanded the ranch, buying additional land and increasing their herd. With Beatrice's help managing the finances and Tom as his foreman, the operation became increasingly profitable. They built an addition onto the house to accommodate their growing family, adding more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Life was not always easy. They struggled through droughts and hard winters, sickness and accidents. There were times when money was tight and times when they lost cattle to disease or predators. But through it all, they faced everything together, their love and partnership growing stronger with each passing year. On their 10th anniversary, Isaac took Beatrice on a rare trip away from the ranch. Rosa and Miguel agreed to watch the children for 2 days, and Isaac brought Beatrice back to the spot where he had found her in the desert. "Why are we here?" Beatrice asked, confused. Isaac dismounted and helped her down, then led her to a flat rock where he had set up a small picnic. "Because this is where our story began," he said. 10 years ago, I was riding back from checking fences, not expecting anything more than another ordinary day. And instead, I found you. The best thing that ever happened to me." Beatrice looked around at the scrubland, remembering the terror and desperation she had felt that day. "I thought I was going to die here," she said quietly. "I had given up, and then I heard your horse." "I think about that sometimes," Isaac admitted. "What would have happened if I had taken a different path that day or left an hour later? You would have died. Our children would never have been born. I would still be alone on that ranch, working myself to death and calling it a life." He took her hands in his. "Finding you saved me just as much as it saved you." "We saved each other," Beatrice said, echoing his words from years before. "Just like you always said." They ate their picnic and talked about the decade they had shared, all the memories they had built. The births of their children, the growth of the ranch, the friends they had made and the challenges they had overcome. They talked about the future they still wanted to create together, the dreams they still had. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Isaac pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a delicate necklace with a small diamond pendant. "I wanted to get you something special," he said as he fastened it around her neck. "Something to mark this anniversary and everything we have built together. It is not much, but I hope you like it." "It is beautiful," Beatrice said, touching the pendant. "But you did not need to get me anything. You have already given me everything I could ever want." "I could say the same to you," Isaac replied. He pulled her close, kissing her with the same passion and tenderness he had shown on their wedding night. "Here is to 10 more years," he said when they finally broke apart. "And 10 after that, and 10 after that. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Beatrice, growing old together on our ranch, watching our children grow up and have children of their own." "That sounds perfect," Beatrice said, resting her head against his chest. "Absolutely perfect." The years continued to pass, each one adding new layers to their story. Thomas grew into a serious, hard-working young man who loved the ranch and wanted to take it over someday. Sarah was spirited and intelligent, always asking questions and pushing boundaries. Matthew was gentle and artistic, constantly drawing pictures of the animals and landscapes around them. And Ruth was the baby, sweet-natured and affectionate, who could wrap her father around her little finger with a single smile. Isaac was a wonderful father to all of them, patient and loving and firm when necessary. He taught his sons how to work the ranch and his daughters that they were just as capable as any boy. Beatrice taught all of them to read and write and do arithmetic, determined that her children would have the education she had struggled to get in Boston. In 1895, when Thomas was 18, he told his parents he wanted to marry a girl from town named Elizabeth. Isaac and Beatrice gave their blessing, and the wedding was held at the ranch with half the county attending. It was a joyous celebration, and Beatrice found herself crying as she watched her oldest son pledge his life to someone else. "He will always be your boy," Isaac said, putting his arm around her as they watched Thomas and Elizabeth dance. "He is just sharing his life with someone else now, the way you share yours with me." "When did he grow up?" Beatrice asked. "It feels like just yesterday he was a baby in my arms." "I know," Isaac agreed. "But look at him. He is happy and healthy and ready to start his own family. We did that. We raised him right. You should be proud." "I am," Beatrice said. "I am proud of all of them, and I am proud of us, of what we have built together." By 1900, the ranch was prosperous and well established. Thomas and Elizabeth lived in a house Isaac had helped them build on the north edge of the property, and they had given Isaac and Beatrice their first grandchild, a boy named Isaac James. Sarah had surprised everyone by deciding to become a teacher, and she was working at the school in Florissant. Matthew was helping manage the ranch alongside his father and older brother, though he still spent his evenings sketching. And Ruth, at 11, was already showing signs of being a force to be reckoned with on a warm summer evening, as Isaac and Beatrice sat on their porch watching the sun set, just as they had done countless times before. Beatrice reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought her to this moment. "Do you ever think about what almost happened?" she asked Isaac. "If things had gone differently, sometimes," Isaac admitted. "But I try not to dwell on it. We are here now together with a life and family we can be proud of. That is what matters." "I never told you," Beatrice said slowly, "but sometimes I still dream about that day in the desert. I am lost and alone, and I know I am going to die. But then I hear your voice calling to me, and I wake up safe in our bed with you beside me." Isaac reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. "You are safe," he said firmly. "You will always be safe with me. That is a promise I made the day I found you, and it is a promise I will keep until the day I die." "I know," Beatrice said, "and I promise the same to you. We will face whatever comes together, just like we always have." As darkness fell, and the stars began to appear in the vast Arizona sky, they sat together in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of loving partnership. Inside the house, they could hear Ruth practicing her piano, the notes drifting out through the open windows. In the distance, they could see the lights from Thomas and Elizabeth's house. The ranch was quiet except for the sounds of night birds and the gentle lowing of cattle. "I love you," Isaac said suddenly. "I do not say it enough anymore, I think. We get busy with the ranch and the children and life, but I want you to know that I love you just as much now as I did the day we married. Maybe more, because now I know all your quirks and flaws, and I love you anyway." Beatrice laughed. "My flaws? What about yours? You leave your boots in the middle of the floor and you snore when you sleep on your back. See? And you still love me despite all that," Isaac said with a grin. "That is how I know what we have is real." I do love you, Beatrice said seriously. More than I ever thought possible. You took a broken, desperate woman and gave her a reason to live. You gave me a home and a family and a future. You are the best decision I ever made. Second best, Isaac corrected. The best decision you made was surviving that day in the desert, not giving up even when you thought all was lost. That took real courage. I did not feel courageous, Beatrice said. I felt terrified and defeated, but then you appeared like an answer to a prayer I did not know I was praying. We were meant to find each other, Isaac said with certainty. I have always believed that. The universe or fate or God, whatever you want to call it, put us on that collision course because we needed each other. You needed someone to save you, and I needed someone to save. And then we discovered we needed each other for so much more than that. They stayed outside until the chill of the evening drove them indoors. Ruth had finished her practicing and gone to bed, and the house was quiet. They performed their nightly routine, checking the doors and windows, banking the fire, preparing for the next day. And then they went to their bedroom, the room they had shared for 17 years, and got ready for bed. As they lay in the darkness, Isaac's arm around Beatrice and her head on his chest, she thought about all the years behind them and all the years still to come. There would be more grandchildren. She was certain of it. Sarah would eventually marry. She was courting a young lawyer from Phoenix. Matthew would find someone who appreciated his gentle nature and artistic soul. Ruth would grow up and become whoever she was meant to be, and through it all, she and Isaac would be together, facing each challenge and celebrating each joy as partners and lovers and best friends. The desert had almost taken her life, but it had also given her everything worth living for. She had survived to find love and build a family, to create a legacy that would endure long after she was gone. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness, not sure if Isaac was still awake. "For what?" His voice rumbled beneath her ear. "For saving me, for loving me, for giving me this life. Thank you," Isaac replied, "for letting me, for trusting me, for making my life worth living." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, two souls who had found each other against impossible odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of desperation and loneliness. The ranch settled into peaceful quiet around them, a testament to what could be achieved through love, determination, and the courage to take a chance on hope when all seemed lost. The years continued to unfold in their natural rhythm. Sarah married her lawyer in 1902, and they moved to Phoenix where he had established a successful practice. Matthew met a quiet woman named Clara who shared his love of art, and they married in 1904, building a small house on the south edge of the ranch property. Ruth, as predicted, grew into a formidable young woman who declared her intention to study medicine, much to everyone's surprise and Isaac's immense pride. Thomas and Elizabeth had 3 more children, giving Isaac and Beatrice a total of 4 grandchildren from them alone. Sarah and her husband had twins in 1903, and Matthew and Clara had a daughter in 1905. The ranch house was constantly filled with visiting family members, children running wild through the house and yard, the sound of multiple generations coming together. Isaac began teaching Thomas more about the business side of ranching, gradually preparing him to take over entirely someday. But he showed no signs of slowing down himself, still rising before dawn to work alongside his sons and hired hands, still finding satisfaction in the physical labor that had defined most of his adult life. Beatrice stayed active as well, though she let the younger women take over more of the heavy household work. She focused her energy on her grandchildren, teaching them to read and telling them stories, and she continued to manage the ranch accounts with the same precision she always had. She also took up gardening, creating a small oasis of vegetables and flowers around the house that became the envy of the county. In 1908, on their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration that brought people from all over Arizona. Friends and neighbors, ranch hands past and present, business associates and family all gathered to honor the couple who had become pillars of their community. 25 years, Isaac said in his speech, his arm around Beatrice as they stood before the assembled crowd. 25 years ago, I was a lonely cowboy with nothing but a small ranch and big dreams. Then I found this woman dying in the desert, and my whole life changed. She brought love and laughter and purpose into my life. She gave me a family and made my house a home. Everything good in my life comes from that one moment when I decided to check the south fence line instead of the north. I thank God every day for that decision. Beatrice stood and addressed the crowd, her voice strong despite the tears in her eyes. I came to Arizona as a desperate woman with nowhere else to turn. I thought I knew what I needed, but I was wrong. What I needed was exactly what I found in Isaac. A partner who respected me, a husband who loved me not despite my flaws and mistakes, but because of them. He taught me that family is not always about blood, that home is not a place but the people you choose to be with. I love you, Isaac Owens, more today than ever before. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. Isaac and Beatrice danced together as the sun set, moving in the practiced rhythm of people who had been together for decades and knew each other's every step. Here is to another 25 years, Isaac said as they swayed to the music. At least, Beatrice replied with a smile. I plan to grow very old with you, Mr. Owens. That sounds perfect, Mrs. Owens, Isaac said. Absolutely perfect. As they moved into their late 50s and early 60s, Isaac and Beatrice began to slow down, though neither would ever admit it. Isaac's knees bothered him more, especially in cold weather, and Beatrice developed arthritis in her hands that made sewing more difficult. But they adapted, finding new ways to contribute and stay active even as they allowed the younger generation to shoulder more of the burden. Thomas had officially taken over running the ranch by 1915, though Isaac still came out most days to offer advice and help where he could. Beatrice spent more time with her grandchildren, who ranged in age from infants to teenagers now. She loved watching them grow and develop their own personalities, seeing traces of both herself and Isaac in their faces and mannerisms. The world was changing rapidly. The First World War raged in Europe, though it felt distant and unreal from the Arizona desert. Automobiles were becoming more common, though Isaac declared he would never trust one, preferring his horses until the day he died. The ranch installed electricity in 1916, a luxury that made Beatrice's life considerably easier, but which Isaac viewed with suspicion. I do not understand the need for all this progress, he grumbled as technicians installed the wiring. We have done fine with oil lamps for decades. Progress is not always bad, Beatrice reminded him gently. Remember, you were once new and frightening to people who had lived here before. Change happens whether we like it or not. We can either adapt or be left behind. When did you get so wise? Isaac asked with a smile. I married a wise man, Beatrice replied. Some of it was bound to rub off eventually. In 1920, as they approached their 70s, Isaac and Beatrice took a rare trip back east to Boston. Beatrice had not been back since leaving for Arizona 37 years earlier, and she was curious to see how it had changed. They spent 2 weeks visiting the places of her childhood, walking streets that felt both familiar and foreign. The city was bigger, louder, more crowded than she remembered. I do not miss it, she told Isaac as they stood in front of the tenement building where she had once lived. "This was never really home, even when I lived here. Home is in Arizona with you and our family." "Are you sure?" Isaac asked. "We could stay longer if you want, visit more places." "I am sure," Beatrice said firmly. "I have seen what I needed to see. Let us go home." The train ride back to Arizona felt interminably long, both of them eager to return to familiar territory. When they finally arrived and saw Thomas waiting to pick them up at the station, Beatrice felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. "Welcome home," Thomas said, embracing them both. "The ranch has been too quiet without you." The house was full when they returned. All their children and grandchildren gathered to welcome them back. Ruth had come from medical school in California, where she was in her final year. Sarah and her husband had driven up from Phoenix with their now teenage twins. Matthew and Clara and their children were there, having walked over from their house on the property. And Thomas's growing brood filled every corner of the house with noise and energy. "This," Isaac said, looking around at the chaos of his family, "this is what life is all about. Not fancy cities or new technology or wealth. This, family and love and home." "I could not agree more," Beatrice said, squeezing his hand. They settled back into ranch life with relief, both of them realizing they were truly too old for extensive travel now. But that was fine. Everything they needed and wanted was right here in Arizona, on this land they had worked and loved for nearly 4 decades. In 1923, Isaac had a heart attack while working in the South pasture. Thomas found him and brought him back to the house, where Dr. Hardy, now ancient himself but still practicing, declared that Isaac needed complete rest for several months. Isaac chafed against the restriction, arguing that the ranch needed him, but Beatrice was firm. "The ranch will be fine," she said, holding his hand as he lay in their bed. "Thomas knows what he is doing and Matthew can help. What the ranch cannot survive is losing you. So you will rest and recover and you will not argue with me about it." "You are a tyrant," Isaac said, but his tone was affectionate. "I learned from the best," Beatrice replied. "Now rest." Isaac recovered, though he was never quite as strong afterward. He moved more slowly, tired more easily, and finally accepted that his days of active ranching were behind him. But he found new purpose in teaching his grandchildren about the land and the livestock, passing on decades of accumulated knowledge to the next generation. Beatrice, too, was slowing down. Her arthritis had worsened, and she used a cane to walk now. But her mind remained sharp, and she still managed the household with quiet efficiency, though she had help from her daughters-in-law and granddaughters now. On quiet evenings, she and Isaac would sit on the porch just as they had done for 40 years, watching the sunset paint the desert in brilliant colors. They talked about the past, remembering all the years they had shared, all the challenges they had overcome and joys they had celebrated. They talked about the future too, though they both knew their time was growing short. "When I die," Isaac said one evening, "I want to be buried on the ranch, on that hill overlooking the south pasture where I found you." "Do not talk about dying," Beatrice said, though she knew it was a conversation they needed to have. "You are going to outlive us all, you stubborn man." "We both know that is not true," Isaac said gently. "I am 73 years old and my heart is not what it used to be. We need to talk about these things while we still can." He took her hand. "Promise me you will bury me there on that hill, and when your time comes I want you beside me. That spot is special, where our story truly began." "I promise," Beatrice said, tears streaming down her face. "But I want you to promise me something too. Promise me you will fight to stay with me as long as possible. I am not ready to lose you." "I promise," Isaac said. "I will stay with you as long as I can, But when the time comes, you have to let me go. You have to keep living, keep being there for our children and grandchildren. They need you. We need each other, Beatrice insisted. We have always needed each other. Isaac pulled her close as their aging bodies would allow, and we always will, even after death. I do not believe this is the end for us. I think we will find each other again, somewhere, somehow. What we have is too strong to be broken by something as simple as death. They sat like that as darkness fell, holding each other and drawing comfort from a lifetime of shared love and partnership. Around them, the ranch settled into its nightly routine, a living testament to everything they had built together. Isaac lived another 5 years, making it to 78 before his heart finally gave out in the spring of 1928. He died peacefully in his sleep, with Beatrice beside him just as she had been for 45 years. The funeral was massive, with people coming from all over Arizona to pay their respects to a man who had been respected and loved by everyone who knew him. True to his wishes, they buried him on the hill overlooking the south pasture, not far from where he had found Beatrice all those years ago. A simple headstone marked the spot. Isaac James Owens, 1850–1928, beloved husband, father, and grandfather. Beatrice thought her heart would break with the loss. For weeks, she barely ate or spoke, moving through the house like a ghost. Her children were worried about her, watching helplessly as she seemed to fade before their eyes. But slowly, gradually, she found her way back to living. She had promised Isaac she would, and she was not about to break that promise. She threw herself into being with her family, spending time with each of her children and the ever-growing number of grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. She told them stories about Isaac, making sure they understood what an extraordinary man he had been. She told them about how he had saved her in the desert, how he had married her despite her being pregnant with another man's child, how he had loved and raised Thomas as his own with never a word of difference. "Your grandfather," she would say, "was the best man I ever knew. He taught me what real love looks like, what partnership means, what it takes to build a life worth living. Remember him. Honor him by living your lives with the same integrity and kindness he showed." Beatrice lived for another 7 years after Isaac's death, making it to 86 before her own heart finally wore out. She died on a warm summer evening in 1935, surrounded by her children, in the same bed she had shared with Isaac for so many years. Her last words were, "I am coming, Isaac. Wait for me." They buried her beside him on the hill just as she had requested. Her headstone read, "Beatrice Marie Owens, 1861–1935, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother." Beneath that, someone had added, "Together forever." The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through Thomas to his children and eventually to their children. Over the decades, it grew and changed, adapting to new times and technologies. But the house that Isaac built, with its additions and modifications, remained at the heart of the property. And on the hill, overlooking the south pasture, the two headstones stood side by side, a testament to a love that had survived impossible odds and created a legacy that would endure for generations. The story of how Isaac found Beatrice in the desert became family legend, told and retold at gatherings and celebrations. It became a reminder that sometimes the most important moments in life come when we least expect them, that love can bloom in the harshest environments, and that two people who choose each other and commit to building a life together can create something truly extraordinary. Years turned into decades, and the old-timers who had known Isaac and Beatrice personally passed away. But their story lived on, evolving with each telling but always maintaining its essential truth. A desperate woman lost in the desert, a cowboy who found her just in time, and a love that saved them both and created a family that would continue for generations. The ranch prospered through good times and bad, through wars and depressions, droughts and floods. Each generation added their own chapter to the story, their own contributions to the legacy. But they all knew where it had started, on that hot June day in 1883, when Isaac Owens rode out to check a fence line, and instead found his future lying half dead in the sand. On the hill overlooking the south pasture, wildflowers grew around the two headstones, planted long ago by grandchildren and maintained by great and great-great-grandchildren who never knew the couple but understood their importance. In spring, the desert bloomed with color, and the hill became a place of beauty and peace. Family members would sometimes hike up there to sit beside the graves and think about the two people who had started it all. And if you sat there long enough, on a quiet evening when the sun was setting and the desert was turning gold, you could almost imagine you heard voices on the wind. A man's voice, warm and kind, calling out in concern. A woman's voice, weak but determined, answering back. The beginning of a conversation that would last a lifetime and beyond. A love story that refused to be forgotten. A legacy that would endure as long as the desert itself stood witness to what had happened there so many years ago.